Hello Year 4, I hope you're all okay. We're back with Bill's new frock and we're on chapter 5 today. Didn't sound a great day, did it, for Bill? Because this chapter's called The Big Fight. Let's find out what happens. It rained all through the lunch hour. The sky went grey and the windows misted over, and from overhead came the steady gunfire sound of huge raindrops pinging smartly on the sky. And Miss Collins slipped into one of her dark, wet break moods. Everyone knew the signs, her eyebrows knitting together over her nose, the lines across her forehead deepening to furrows, her lips thinning to tightened purse strings. Everyone knew it was not the time to cause trouble. So as the rain beat heavily against the window panes, everyone crept quietly around the classroom, trying to look as if they were up to something useful or sensible, or at very least, quiet. Out of the storeroom came the old comic box. Nobody meant to make a great noise and a fuss. All anyone wanted was simply to go to the box, dip their hand in, and pick out a couple of comics that they liked. Nobody meant to end up in a scrum, pushing and shoving the others out of the way, using their elbows, desperate to get an arm in and whip out a favourite comic book before someone else leaned over and snatched it. Nobody meant to end up in a riot. "Silence!" roared Miss Collins. "Go back to your places at once. I will give out the comics myself." As she came over, everyone melted away from the comic box and drifted back to their own favourite wet break places. Talila and Kirsty sat side by side on the fat radiator pipes. Flora perched on a windowsill. Philip and Nicky sprawled on the floor beneath table 5, and Bill, who probably would have joined them on any other wet day, glanced down at all the marks and smears and tears he'd already made on his pretty pink frock, and then at the muddy grime and footprints all over the floor where his friends were, and thought better of it. He settled himself alone, leaning his chair back against the wall, and waited for Miss Collins to hand round the comics. They were a shabby and dog-eared lot. It was with a slight shudder of disgust that Miss Collins dipped her hands in the box to lift them out, and stared round the room. Like everyone else, Bill hoped so hard that she would go round his way first. But he was out of luck. She went the other way. It took her ages. All of the beanos went first, of course, then the dandies. She gave out a Hotspur and a Lion, and then several Bunties and some Victors. By the time she reached Bill Simpson, there was very little left. "Mandy," she offered him, "or would you prefer a Judy or a Jane?" He could tell from the look on her face that she wasn't in the mood for discussion, so he contented himself with a reply coldly. "I'll have a Thunder, please, or a Hornet." "No more Hornets," she said, leafing through the last 3 or 4 comics left in her hand. "No Thunders either. I thought I might still have a Valiant, but I must have given that to Ronan." She thrust a Bunty towards him. "There you are," she said. "You'll enjoy this. There are almost no pages missing at all." And off she went back to her desk. Bill glanced down at the comic in his hands. He didn't care for the look of it at all. He didn't want to read it. What use was a Bunty? He wanted a Beano or a Dandy or a Thunder, and that was that. Melissa was sitting only a few feet away, absorbed in a Beano. Bill leaned across. "Hey, Melissa," he called softly. "Here's a Bunty with all the pages and no torn bits. Do you want to swap?" Melissa gazed over at him over her comic, her eyes widening even more as she realised he was serious. "You must be joking," she said, and went back to her Beano. Bill tried the other side. Flora was sitting firmly on one dandy and reading another. "Flora," called Bill, Would you like a bunty? No, thank you, Flora said politely, without so much as raising her eyes from the page. Bill Simpson decided to have a go at one of the boys. Ronan! Ronan! He hissed. Hey, Ronan! I'll swap you my practically brand new comic here for your tatty old Valiant with hardly any pages left. What's your comic? Asked Ronan. Is it a Hotspur? No, Bill confessed. No, it's a bunty. Ronan just sniggered and went back to his comic. Clearly he thought it was just a good joke. Bill tried one last time. Martin, he offered, will you swap with me as soon as you finished that Victor? Martin said, Sure, what you got there? Bill said it as softly as he could. Bunty. What? Said Martin. What? So Bill Simpson had to tell him all over again. Martin snorted. No thanks, he said. No thanks, I'll swap mine with Melissa's Beano instead. And he went back to his reading. Bill blamed Miss Collins, frankly. Though he couldn't prove it and wouldn't dare ask, he firmly suspected that if he had not been wearing a pretty pink frock, he would never have ended up with that bunty. Miss Collins could have easily arranged things some other way. She might have ordered Flora to give him the dandy she was sitting on, to keep him going. Or she might have suggested to Ronan and Bill that they sit closer together to read the Valiant at the same time. He couldn't prove it. No, he couldn't prove it. But he felt sore about it all the same. But clearly there was nothing to be done now. It was too late. Everyone else was reading quietly, and Miss Collins didn't look as if she would take at all kindly to any complaints. He could either waste the whole lunch break trying completely in vain to find someone who would trade their comic for his bunty, or he could just give up and just read the bunty. He read the bunty. And it wasn't that bad. He read the story about the sneaky schoolteacher who switched the examination papers around so that her own spoilt and lazy daughter would win the one and only college place. He read the story about the brave orphan gypsy girl who led her lame pony carefully at night through the dangerous war zone. He was still quite absorbed in the very funny tale of 3 girls who had somehow found themselves responsible for an enormous hippopotamus with an even more enormous appetite when a shadow fell over the page. Flora was holding out a dandy. Swap? In a minute, let me just finish this. Now or never, said Flora. All right then, said Bill. A little regretfully, he wouldn't have minded finding out what the hippo ate next. Bill handed over his bunty and took the dandy. No sooner as he turned the first page than yet another shadow fell over him, and Ronan was standing at his side. Here, you take this and I'll have that one. In his hand, Ronan had a copy of June. No thanks, said Bill, and he went back to his reading. Oh, come on, said Ronan. Don't be mean. Swap comics with me. I don't want this one. I don't want it either. You haven't read it. I'm reading this. Bill shook his dandy in Ronan's face. That was the first big mistake. His second big mistake was not moving fast enough when Ronan reached out and tried to snatch it. Ronan's grip tightened over the top of the comic. Let go of my dandy. Don't be so mean. Mean? Why should I give you my dandy and take your rotten June? Because you might like it, said Ronan, and I definitely won't. The penny dropped. It was the frock again. Bill couldn't believe it. Hadn't the morning been agonising enough? Now was even his lunch break going to be ruined because he'd just happened to be wearing this stupid, silly curse of a dress? If that was the sort of thing that kept happening to you if you came to school in a frilly pink frock, no wonder all the girls wore jeans. Bill Simpson had had quite enough. Let go of my comic, he warned Ronan in a dangerous voice. Let go of it, or I shall mash you. In answer to this threat, Ronan tugged harder. The dandy began to tear. Let go, repeated Bill Simpson. Ronan pulled harder. Bill Simpson hit him. He clenched his fist and punched Ronan on the shoulder as hard as he could. Ronan yelped in pain and dropped his half of the comic. Though his heart was thumping so fiercely, his eyes couldn't settle on the pictures, let alone read the print. Bill Simpson pretended he had calmly gone back to his dandy, until Ronan kicked out at him. In fact, his foot didn't touch Bill at all. It tangled instead in the folds of his pretty pink dress. But it did leave a great black crisscross footprint on the flimsy material, and it was a kick. Bill was furious. He leapt to his feet and started hitting Ronan as hard as he could. Ronan put his own fists out to defend himself, and within seconds they were having a fight. The noise was tremendous. Everyone in the classroom started up at once. Some asking who'd started the fight, some egging on one side or the other, some telling both of them to stop. Then, as the blows rained down on either side, everyone around fell silent. For this was the first really big fight ever seen in the classroom itself, and it was shocking. No one was ever surprised to see an odd, sly kick on someone's ankle. Everyone had noticed the occasional deliberate tripping up or hard nudge. But nothing like this. Not a real big fight. Never. It was Miss Collins who put a stop to it. Striding across the room in a fury, she grasped both of them by the shoulder and hauled them apart. Both were scarlet with rage. "How dare you!" shouted Miss Collins. "How dare you!" She was enraged too. No one had ever seen her looking so angry. Her dark, wet break mood had turned it so fierce she looked fit to kill. Her eyes were flashing, her nose had gone pointy, and her mouth had shrunk to a lemon-sucking sliver. "How dare you!" Ronan and Bill stood glowering at one another. "What's going on? Who started this fight?" "It wasn't my fault," snarled Ronan. "I didn't start it." "You did," snarled Bill, clenching his fist again. "You kicked me." He showed the footprint on his pretty pink frock. "You punched me first," insisted Ronan, rubbing his shoulder hard to try and get sympathy from the bystanders. But Miss Collins, for one, wasn't impressed. She didn't even appear to have heard what he said. She was busy leaning over to look at the footprint on Bill Simpson's frock. "This is shocking, Ronan," she said. "Shocking! To leave a footprint as clear as this on a frock, you must have lashed out really hard with your foot." "I was punched first." But Ronan's wailing did him no good. A look of scorn came over Miss Collins' face. Though she said nothing out loud, you could almost hear her thinking. How could a little thump on the shoulder from someone in a pretty pink frock excuse a great big kick from someone wearing solid, heavy, sensible shoes? So, thought Bill Simpson quietly to himself, there can be one advantage to wearing a frock. It didn't last long, though. She punished them both. She put them at neighbouring desks and made them write, "Fighting is stupid" and "Fighting is ugly" in their best handwriting over and over again, till the bell rang. They sat with exactly the same sour looks on their faces. Both were still furious at the unfairness of it all. To everyone else, they looked for all the world like a pair of scowling and bad-tempered twins. And every now and again, someone would tiptoe past and whisper in Ronan's ear, "You look really angry." But in Bill's they whispered, "You look so upset." Oh dear, it was Bill. There you go, there's the lines that they had to write in their wet play. It's a lesson to everyone, isn't it? Don't get into a scuffle over a comic. What a silly argument and a silly fight. So it was Bill that got into a fight, which is what I was fearing yesterday. Tomorrow, chapter 6 is called Letting Paul Win. I wonder what that's about. We'll find out tomorrow, won't we? We've actually only got 2 chapters left. I'm not going to tell you what chapter 7's called yet because it might give away the ending. So tomorrow, chapter 6, Letting Paul Win. We'll see how Bill's day goes tomorrow. Take care now and enjoy the rest of your day. Get yourselves logged on to Doodle and get those activities completed and have some fun with them. Take care now and I'll see you again tomorrow. Bye everyone.